This is Sky News today. It's 10 o'clock. The headlines. Energy shock. The biggest ever rise in fuel bills hits millions of households with a warning of worse to come.
Wholesale markets are incredibly volatile, and we can't predict where they're going to go. If they stay where they are, we will see prices go up again in winter.
Turning off the taps. Russia vows to cut Europe's gas supply today unless it's paid for in rubles. Another attempt to allow civilians to flee the besieged city of Mariupol, but the mayor says it's still not safe. No more free tests. Most people in England will have to pay for their COVID lateral flow tests from today. And in the pot, England wait to see who they'll draw in the World Cup, with Scotland and Wales still hoping to qualify as well. A very good morning to you. The biggest rise in household fuel bills in living memory has taken place today, dealing a massive blow to millions of families already struggling with the soaring cost of living. The cap on energy prices has jumped significantly, in one stroke doubling the number of people in so-called fuel stress. That means 5 million people now spend more than 10% of their disposable income on energy. And there are warnings of worse to come when bills begin to reflect the effects of the war in Ukraine. Let's take a closer look at the numbers. The price cap is increasing by 54% or £693 per year. So annual energy costs for many are jumping from £1,277 to £1,971. It's estimated this will impact around 22 million households. The price increase is being driven largely by the cost of wholesale energy, which has risen sharply. And it's not just energy bills. National insurance contributions are also going up by 1.25 percentage points this month, and the rate of inflation expected to reach a 40-year high of 8.7%. The soaring cost of basics means more and more people are turning to food banks, as Sky's Lisa Holland reports. The founder of Octopus Energy, Greg Jackson, told Sky News that if markets stay as they are, energy prices could go up again in the winter. He's been speaking to our business correspondent, Paul Kelso. The Chancellor's come under increasing pressure to help the most vulnerable, but the policing minister, Kit Malthouse, has defended Rishi Sunak's handling of the cost of living crisis. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue, who's in Westminster. And Ali, as Kit Malthouse was saying there, of course, some factors out of the government's control, some are in their control. But either way, is this likely to hurt them at the polls as we approach local elections? Ali, thank you. At 4:30 this afternoon, by the way, on Sky News, we'll have a money-saving expert answering your questions about the cost of living crisis. Scan the QR code on screen now if you'd like to submit a question ahead of that. 4:30 later. Further adding to the stress on energy costs is a demand by Russia's president for its gas to be paid for in rubles. Vladimir Putin had threatened to cut off supplies from Europe today. Let's cross live to our city and business presenter, Ian King. Ian, great to see you. I guess the irony, of course, in all of this is traditionally a country like Russia would have loved hard currency, dollars and euros, foreign currencies, and given various moving parts, they're for once seeking rubles instead. Ian, as always, thanks so much for that. And by the way, the US measure of oil prices, WTI, just back below $100 this morning, though Brent, the international gauge, still 104, well off the recent highs of 119, though. In Ukraine, officials in the besieged city of Mariupol say Russian forces have blocked the delivery aid, and a humanitarian corridor to allow people to leave has not been opened. 170,000 people are believed to be trapped. In the last few minutes, the Red Cross says authorities on both sides have now approved an evacuation plan involving 54 buses, although not yet clear where in Ukraine evacuees will be taken. In other developments, Ukrainian authorities say Russia has handed back control of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The latest Russian troops reportedly left early this morning. On the diplomatic side of things, a new round of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine scheduled for today. Here, the Ministry of Defense says Kiev and Chernihiv are still being hit by air and missile strikes, despite Russian promises to scale back attacks. The MOD also says Russia is redeploying troops from Georgia to Ukraine to make up for its casualties. Our security and defense editor, Deborah Haynes, has this update from Kiev. Some of today's other news now. The government has backtracked on plans not to ban so-called conversion therapy for gay and bisexual people in England and Wales. The U-turn, which came hours after the original announcement, follows retaliation from LGBT groups and some MPs. However, the legislation will not cover transsexual people. MPs are to hold an inquiry into the detention and release from Iran of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe and Anousheh Shouri. The Commons Foreign Committee will take evidence on how their cases were handled as part of a wider investigation into what it calls state-level hostage situations. Millions of people in England will have to pay for COVID tests from today. People in high-risk groups and those in danger of developing serious symptoms will be exempt. Ministers argue that vaccines will protect the general public despite rising infection levels. This is Sky News Today. Coming up, French criticism of Qatar's human rights record ahead of today's World Cup draw. The organisers of the Qatar World Cup have hit back at criticism after the president of the Norwegian FA condemned the country's poor human rights record yesterday. Qatar's in the spotlight today as it hosts the draw for the group stages of the tournament. Our sports correspondent Tom Parmenter is in Doha. Don't say that we're among the favourites yet, Tom. Step by step. Tom Parmenter there for us in Doha. Now for a check on the weather. A bitter northerly wind will bring further wintry showers today with more general rain, sleet and hill snow in the north. It'll feel cold this afternoon, especially in the raw wind across southeast of England, but coastal gales will in fact ease. Southeast Scotland and central and eastern England will see a mix of sunny spells and wintry showers. Meanwhile, rain, sleet and snow spreading across Scotland will reach Donegal and Northern Ireland later. Elsewhere, it'll mainly be dry with plenty of sunshine. Tonight, rain, sleet and hill snow will move across Ireland, Wales and western parts of England, while a few wintry showers linger in the east. A widespread frost will develop again, with icy stretches possible. Saturday will bring further showers, some wintry, but will be a decent amount of sunny spells as well. The showers will be prolonged in places, especially for Wales and southwest England. It'll stay on the cold side. Sunday will bring more cloud with rain moving into the west. A change in wind direction means it won't be as cold as previous days. We are, in fact, now going to pivot to New Delhi live, where the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is giving a news conference. Let's listen to him. Sergei Lavrov live there in New Delhi in India, and just come off that there is some Russian translation coming over the top. We'll dip back into that, though, with any headlines. And just a few of them that came out of that. He was saying his Western partners are very, very unreliable, and that is the rationale for why Russia wants to move back to dealing in rubles, and that process had been going on for a long time. Unclear whether that aspect of it is true or not. He added that they don't want their Western masters to be able to freeze their money, and clearly that's one of the more short-term rationales for wanting to move things to rubles. Of course, they're meeting in India, and he said that China and India were willing to pay for things more in rubles, implying that was on its way, and said that India was ready to cooperate on trade with India. Not much of more of an announcement there, but something that will be interesting to watch how far India goes in terms of being on Russia's side in all this. Just on the headline, in terms of peace talks with Ukraine, he said there's no finally approved plans. Talks should continue. Agreements need to be reached and formed, but he did say there was movement in terms of recognition from Ukraine that they can't be part of a bloc, meaning, of course, NATO or EU, and that they can't have a nuclear status. He suggested the Ukrainians had started to move to share that position with Russia. He also said there's much, much more understanding from Ukrainians about Russia's position in the Donbass and Crimea. Again, remains to be seen whether the Ukrainians really have agreed or found any common ground with the Russians on that. But that was the rhetoric coming from Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, just now in New Delhi. We'll bring you any further headlines from that press conference as and when we have them. Meanwhile, Ukraine's general staff says Russian troops have started a partial withdrawal from around the capital, Kiev. Ukrainian forces have retaken the town of Irpin on the outskirts of Kiev after it was bombarded by Russia for more than a month. Sky's special correspondent, Alex Crawford, has been there and sent us this report. Now, a major fire has broken out at an oil depot in Belgorod in Russia. And the video from Belgorod has been geolocated and verified now by Sky News. The regional Russian government has accused Ukraine of carrying out an airstrike on the depot overnight. Ukraine has denied it, but as I just said, Sky News has now verified that fire. Will be a very interesting thing to discuss with some of our military experts coming up on the show, whether we do believe now it's possible Ukraine is making proactive attacks across the border in Russia. But of course, Ukrainian officials, as I said there, have denied it. The UK government will ban so-called conversion therapy for gay and bisexual people in England and Wales, but not for transgender people. The announcement was made hours after the government said it would drop the ban entirely. Sky's chief political correspondent, John Craig, explains why the government U-turned so quickly. John Craig there. Millions of people in England will have to pay for symptomatic and asymptomatic COVID tests from today. People in high-risk groups and those in danger of developing serious symptoms, though, will be exempt. As ministers argue, vaccines will protect the general public despite rising infection levels. Gerard Tubb reports. This is Sky News today. Coming up, could the government have done more to prevent the energy price shock? Welcome back. Let's get more on our top story, the huge rise in the energy price cap that's affecting 22 million households on variable tariffs. It means the number of families who have to spend more than 10% of their disposable income on energy bills has doubled to 5 million. Dale Vince is the founder of the green energy supplier Ecotricity. This morning, he announced he's going to sell his company and move into politics. And Dale, definitely want to get to that topic in a moment. Sounds very exciting for you and significant. But first and foremost, let's touch on the situation we find ourselves in at the moment. And to what extent is this energy crisis out of anyone's control? Now for a check on the weather. There'll be a scattering of wintry showers today, but more rain than we've seen over the last couple of weeks. There'll also be some sleet and snow coming in from the northwest. It'll feel cold again in the afternoon, especially in the raw wind across the southeast of England, but coastal gales there should ease during the course of the day. That's the weather for you now. You're watching Sky News. Coming up on the show this morning, millions of households feel the squeeze as a 54% rise in domestic fuel bills kicks in. We'll have the latest on that and on the ground in Russia and Ukraine.